Good afternoon. Welcome to EduSet Network. Friend, as you know, we are having discussion on conflict in the society and how frequent the conflict and what are the causes and etc. And in the series of lecture on this issue, we are going to discuss today a state initiative, distribution of resources and occurrence of conflict. And for discussion on this very topic, we have in a studio Dr. G.N. Trivedi. He is a senior professor in Delhi University and have keen eye on the conflict situation in India. So I hope his knowledge and experience will help us to understand this topic in a new perspective. So on your behalf, I welcome Dr. Trivedi for EduSet lecture on this topic. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Amranji. Well, as the topic has already been spoken about, state initiative, distribution of resources and occurrence of conflict in India, I am going to focus on three aspects. The one, some critical issues regarding a state initiative, distribution of resources and occurrence of conflict. The basic thrust of this critical issue, the critical issue just I am raising now, is how we have to understand the steps taken by a state and how a state has distributed resources, and ultimately people are not satisfied with all these attempts of the state, so they develop discontent, and this discontent ultimately leads to conflict. So this is first critical issues, and then I just briefly summarize the steps taken by the state, the role played by the state since independence. And then in this context, I would also like to highlight the major issues of conflict, and on those major issues, what has been the response of a state to those major issues of conflict. And finally, I would dwell upon the alternative paradigm of development. So let me begin with some unique experience of India. You know, we all know that India, after independence, pursued the path of parliamentary democracy, and in this pursuance of the path of parliamentary democracy, it also accordingly devised ways of development, strategy of development in accordance with democracy, in accordance with the spirit of democracy. But let me say one thing, that the advent of democracy in India is unique in the sense that if you take democracy in historical sense, then it developed in Europe in a very favorable situation. In Europe, what has happened? There, democracy has followed development. You know, what has happened? Industrial revolution has taken place in Europe. They had a homogeneous society. They had more or less developed the standard of living of the people, and in such developed setting, they brought democracy. So democracy got a conducive atmosphere, a situation where its path was facilitated by development. If you come to India, if you see the India, then in case of India, this was not the situation. India was not at all a homogeneous society. There was many diversity of language, religion, culture, so many diversities. And development, it was completely underdeveloped society, economically underdeveloped, predominantly agrarian. You know, and agriculture was also subsistence agriculture. So in such a society, the task of developing democracy, to put democracy into practice, was indeed a stupendous task. How to bring democracy and how democracy has survived. This is a very important question. Despite all unfavorable situation, democracy has survived in India for last six decades, more than that, and is still continuing. So this is a puzzle. But this puzzle is, of course, it is a puzzle in comparison to Western countries. But it is not a puzzle if you see the tradition, if you see the long a struggle for independence, then we find that some ground was, even though it was agrarian, even though it was not a homogeneous society, during a struggle for freedom, some tradition was developed, some situation was created, which ultimately led to the situation for the development of democracy in India. And the other thing is that legacy of colonialism was not all negative. It also created some favorable situation for democracy. It introduced election, it introduced representative houses. So all these things facilitated the process of democracy despite low development, despite unfavorable situation. Now, the second question is, the second critical issue which I am raising in this context is comprehending the reality of democracy and market. You know, as we know that India did not follow either the path of capitalism or the path of communism. Rather, it adopted the model of mixed economy. But it is a model of mixed economy, but by and large, in this mixed economy, the role of state and the role of private enterprises both were recognized. And in this recognition, we have to understand the politics of democracy and the economics of market. You know, market inherently excludes people. Only those who have purchasing capacity, who have something to buy and something to sell, can survive, can be included in the framework of market. Whereas politics of democracy, it is necessarily inclusive, because in democracy you need the support of the people. Moreover, there is equal distribution of one vote, one person. So democracy and market both present a contradictory situation. In economy, minority can survive, but in politics of democracy, majority, there is a need of majority. Only those who can muster majority, who can command the support of majority, they can be entrusted the task of governance. But there is a problem. The problem with democracy, as John Stuart Mill has pointed out, that there is a possibility of tyranny of majorities. You know, in democracy, what has happened, that the minority views are not given importance. After all, democracy is a rule of majority. Those who get majority support, they rule, they govern. So in such a situation, those who have not voted for the government, those who have differing views, they are in minority, and they do not enjoy their freedom, or they are at the receiving end. They are at the receiving end because they are out of the frame of the majority. So in a democracy, John Stuart Mill has expressed his apprehension that it may lead to tyranny of majorities. But since in Western societies and in many mature democracy, people say that there is no permanent majority. You know, the support is interest based, and if a particular political party supports the interest of a particular social group, then it can get the vote of that particular social group. Since interest varies, it is not fixed, it is flexible. So because of the varying nature of interest, the possibility of majority, permanent majority, is minimal. So that way the tyranny of majorities has been taken care of. I have already explained the exclusion caused by the market. You know, market is a very complex institution. Complex in the sense that it is not that open, particularly in a underdeveloped society. Majority of people out of the framework of market because they do not have capacity, they do not have capability. Those poor who have skill, somewhat they can find some inclusion in the market, but those who are unskilled, poor, for them market is a kind of callous institution. So with these preliminary remarks, I just proceed to highlight the trajectories adopted by the Indian state. You know, India got independence in 1947, and it, as I said, it followed the course of democracy, parliamentary democracy. It brought about a consensus about the strategy of development, that the strategy of development would neither be based on aggressive capitalism or aggressive socialism, but it is a kind of synthesis. It will take something from capitalism, it will also take something from socialism. So it's a democratic socialist situation, or you can call it mixed economy, whatever you want to say, you can say. So this is the situation. This is the situation in the beginning. So that was the nationalist leadership who came to govern. They were successful in bringing about consensus about the function of democracy, about the strategy of development, and it was possible to build consensus because people were there, they had memory of freedom struggle, legacy of nationalism was pervading, it was very fresh in the memory of the people. So they reposed their trust in the leadership, and they thought that they would create a situation which would make India a strong and prosperous nation. So because of there was no scope for conflict, situation was such that those leaders who brought independence, those leaders who were active participants in freedom movement, they were at the helm of affairs. So they were trusted. There was a total trust on the leadership on their leadership, and because of this trust, people also trusted the policies followed by this leadership. You know, there was total both ways. There was no trust deficit, and because of this trust, because of legacy of nationalism, it was a situation where the path of democracy, path of development, both were pursued sincerely. And what were the features of this consensus, or the features of this mixed economy, was that commanding heights of economy would be under state control. This was the feature, that commanding heights of economy, the basic industries, capital intensive industry, they would be under state control, and the consumer industries, they would be under private enterprises, or private initiatives were encouraged for consumer industries. Some people say that the commanding heights of economy, in any case, a state had to play important role, because the Indian capitalist class or in the Indian business class, it was not in a position to invest huge money in capital intensive industries. It was not in a position, it was in a fledgling stage. So it was beyond its capacity to invest or to begin capital intensive industries. So a state, it was in any case, a state had to do this job. A state had to create infrastructure for the development of capital intensive industries. It may have some truth, but this was the model of mixed economy. In this model of mixed economy, it was also visualized that the effort of the state, the role of a state, is directed towards the creation of socialistic pattern of society. You know, we all know that in 1955 there was Awadi Congress. In that Congress, the Congress party passed a resolution for the creation of socialistic pattern of society. And in this socialistic pattern of society, land reforms, land reforms were thought to be very important. Agrarian situation was highly unequal, exploitative, oppressive. So there was a need, urgent need for land reforms. And land reforms laws were enacted by various states. It is different story that in some states it succeeded and in many of the states it did not succeed. Similarly, the public sector units, the capital intensive industries, they were controlled by public sector, they were controlled by the state. So this in brief, in nutshell, this is the strategy of development which was pursued by the state. In other words, a state directed the economic development in India. So the first phase, 1947 till 4th general election, a new vision was there, a grand vision of reconstitution of society and a state was there. It had all loopholes or it had its inadequacies, but there was a vision, there was a honest vision that we have to create a country where democracy and equality prevail. So this was the vision. We cannot dispute about the vision. We may dispute, we may contest about the success of this vision, how much this vision has been realized. Now, this is the first phase of the trajectory of India on the path of democracy and development, or in other words, the initiative taken by the state. The second phase begins from 1967, the 4th general election, and it gave a new turn to democracy and development. This was the time when the legacy of freedom movement already started waning down. The real people's issues, they came up in the forefront. And not only real issues came up in the forefront, but the hopes, aspirations largely remain unfulfilled. There was rising poverty, people were disappointed, and there was weakening of Congress party also, though it won the election in 1967. And it got simple majority. If you compare the performance of Congress party in 1967 election to the earlier performance, then it was disappointing, though it got majority, simple majority. But on the other hand, in a state assembly election, in all the North Indian state assembly elections, it lost. For the first time after independence, Congress party lost assembly elections in North India. So it was a situation, the hope, the aspirations aroused just after independence, they remained unfulfilled. There was all round disappointment. Congress party was weakening its hold on the pulse of the people, considerably weakened, and it had repercussions. There was emergence of Naxal movement. Since 1969, there was a radical peasant movements, Naxalites. They came and they wanted to make a revolution similar to Chinese revolution led by Mao. So it was a situation, or it presents a scenario where the state initiative or the state's role taken by the state, played by the state, did not succeed to convince the people. So people started venting their anger. So in this scenario, in this depressing scenario, a new phase begins in the late 60s and 70s, And what is this? This is politics of co-option and mediation. Because there was rising poverty, there was shortage of food grains. How to overcome this problem? For overcoming this problem, a new strategy of agricultural development was adopted. This is a very important, significant state initiative taken by the state, popularly known as Green Revolution. The purpose, the major thrust of this Green Revolution was to increase agricultural production to overcome the problem of food insecurity. So this was the context of bringing about a radical change in agricultural policies. And so, but the Green Revolution, it is also criticized because it was not evenly started. It was started in such states already developed, they had irrigation facilities and all, and many states underdeveloped, irrigation facilities were not available, suffering poverty, drought. Their Green Revolution was not implemented. And the benefits of Green Revolution, many economists and scholars, they point out that the benefits were appropriated by the rich farmers. So it also did not solve the problem of marginalized and the poor. It created rather regional imbalance. So this is criticized, but one cannot deny that after the implementation of Green Revolution, gradually India overcome the problem of food shortage. It became self-sufficient in food. And this is a period 60s and 70s, late 60s and 70s. It is a period when the practice of agricultural subsidies, it has started. And these subsidies were mainly given to fertilizers, seeds, electricity, and all. So mainly the landholding class, the peasants who had land, they benefited from these agricultural subsidies. It is also a period when poverty alleviation programs started. And in these poverty alleviation programs, I would like to name two programs. The Small Farmers Development Strategy, Small Farmers Development Agency, SFDA, Marginal Farmers and Agricultural Laborers Development Agency, and other such programs were started in the decade of 70s. Not only that, there was a populist rhetoric of Garibi Hatao. After Congress split in 1969, Mrs. Gandhi won the election in 1971, and she won the election, got massive majority on this slogan of Garibi Hatao. And there were some attempts to justify this rhetoric. There was nationalization of bank and other private sectors, coal mines, insurance and all. But structural measures to remove poverty were not introduced. It largely remained a rhetoric. And not only this rhetoric also weakened institutional basis of the parties. The institutions of political parties, and they started declining. It was much more, political parties were much more based on the charisma of the leader. It was not, the parties were not based on the programs, policies and a structure of organization right from block to national level. It was a more personalized politics started after Garibi Hatao and all. And Congress and Mrs. Gandhi, they are responsible for that. So in democracy, the importance of organization is significant. And if there is a decline in the institution and organization, then it shows poor for the development of democracy. And so the initiative taken by the state, this is the initiative was mainly for wooing both the farmers, rich farmers, they benefited from Green Revolution, how to bring them to the fold of Congress party. Not only that, there was also industrialist, the nationalized banks, they organized loan melas for industrialists and for waiving their loans. So there was co-option through the state initiative, and this co-option was for the interest of political party, not for the overall interest of the country, not for the interest of development. So this was a situation which was not very favorable for the cause of development. It was not a situation to really address the issues of the people, and this politics of co-option, this politics of populism, it was no longer confined to one particular party. It pervades all political parties, both at central as well as state levels. So this populism was everywhere. It became the feature of political parties in India. Now, to cut the story short, I come to the politics of liberalization, privatization and globalization. In short, I call them LPG. Since 1991, India has bid adieu to Nehruvian model of development, and it has adopted liberalization, privatization, or economic reforms, you can call it. What is the background of the initiation of LPG? The background of the initiation of LPG is the internal background is internal debt crisis. There was a debt, foreign debt, and India was not in a position to repay it. And the external cause was primarily the collapse of Soviet Union, collapse of communism in Eastern Europe. Soviet Union was a time-tested ally of India. It collapsed. So, internal as well as this external condition created favorable situation for adoption of this altogether new economic strategy, new economic strategy of development. I call it paradigm shift. I just hurriedly highlight some features of this new development paradigm. The first focus was that state institutions, public sectors or state bureaucracy and all, they are not efficient. They are rather the PSU, public sector units, rather they are creating hurdle for economic growth and public investment, public money is wasted. So if you want to ensure economic growth combined with economic efficiency, then you have to make a radical economic change. And how to make this radical economic change? By giving incentive to the private sector. So economic growth combined with economic efficiency. The second feature of this LPG is reduction of the role of the state in the process of economic development and far more reliance on the market. This is also very important feature. Since India has pursued the course of liberalization, the role of a state is declining. A state rather retreating from the realm of development, from the realm of economic development, and it is far more relying on the dynamics of market. Market has been entrusted the role of economic development. So this is second very important feature for which the Indian government or Indian leadership has been off and on criticized. The third is that a very fast, rapid openness of the economy for national as well as foreign capital. You know, now the license permit Raj was done away with, and the economy has been opened for private and foreign capital. They are invited. There are many more facilities are given to them. So this is in nutshell. These three are the important features of new economic policies. Now we can briefly try to understand the consequences of politics of liberalization, privatization and globalization, because the consequences, this without giving much thought to this radical economic change, you have adopted it. What consequences they have given rise to? You know, the consequences of the consequences are many, but I just point out 2-3 consequences. And in the pointing out consequences, the first is understanding the economy of market and politics of democracy. You know, now the economics of market is given primacy. The politics of democracy is occupying secondary position. The primary position has been accorded to economy of market. You know, for the first time, economy asserts its autonomy. For the first time, economy frees itself from the direction of politics. You know what has happened? Since as I said in the beginning, that market is exclusionary by nature. It excludes majority of people. If majority of people are excluded, if a state, if the politics of democracy is given secondary importance, then what will happen? It will give rise to discontentment. People will be dissatisfied. The marginalized and poor, they would be the worst affected lot, and as a result, they will be vulnerable to conflict. They can be easily attracted towards conflict. The second is a spread of consumerism and changing lifestyle of the rich. You know, what has happened, the benefits of this process, the process of LPG, have gone to the rich, have gone to the upper middle class. Their lifestyle has changed dramatically. Their consumption level has changed. You know, the modern lifestyle. So they are the tiny group, rich and middle class. They are a different. But their lifestyle, their way of everything, they are at a much distance from the popular masses. But their lifestyle is not something which is hidden from the people. You know, through electronic media, the common people, the popular masses, they see that on the one hand, rich people, they are leading a life of affluence, whereas they are struggling for basic necessity. So it has a demonstrative effect. Such lifestyle has a demonstrative effect, and it creates alienation. It creates aspirations for the poor people, for the popular masses, that they wish they could also lead such a life, but it is beyond their means. They cannot. So it generates discontentment. It generates, and discontentment is not addressed, is not taken care of. Then what happens? They feel alienated from the process of politics, from the process of a state, and ultimately they are attracted towards conflict. They easily resort to violence to settle their problem. And we know we have a problem of Maoist movement. So if you want to understand Maoist movement deeply, then you have to understand the strategy of development India has particularly adopted since 1991. And what is the other consequences of this? The other consequences of this LPG policies is that the decline of national parties and rise of regional parties. You know, now since 1991, there is a constant decline of all national parties, and regional parties, they are coming up. Without their support, it is difficult to form government at the central level. we have NDA led by BJP and UPA, the present government, led by Congress. So the segmentation of political process, segmentation of political parties. And the second aspect is also very important. On the one hand, we have globalization. We are finding people, they are traveling abroad and going from one place to other, exchanging information. All these things, they are very easy. There is easy passage. Meeting people of different culture, all these things, as they were difficult earlier times, they are not difficult at the present time. But on the other hand, you find a kind of cosmopolitanism in the era of globalization. But on the other hand, it's a really paradoxical that in many of the countries, including India, that you find the politics of identity, where religion and caste, they are given too much importance. They are given too much importance. We know that the decade of Mandal Commission, implementation of recommendation of Mandal Commission, and the Ram Temple movement in the decade of 90s, it changed the nature of Indian politics. Both these processes, both these political processes have changed the nature of Indian politics. So cosmopolitanism, on the other hand, we have identity politics, aggressive identity politics based on caste, religion and region. And it gives rise to a paradoxical situation. What is this paradoxical situation? The paradoxical situation is that economy is dominated by the rich, whereas politics is dominated by the poor, by their increasing participation in the electoral process. The rich, they are, because of globalization, liberalization, the business class, middle class, educated class, skilled class, technocrats, they are reaping the benefits of economy. So economy is dominated by the rich section of society, whereas because of political mobilization based on identity, caste and religion, the poor, they are participating in electoral increasing participation of poor in the electoral politics. So it creates a kind of mismatch between politics and economy, and regionalization of politics may lead to conflict and corruption. This is this is the basis of corruption. This is the main cause of contemporary conflict in Indian society. The economy, it is controlled by the rich class. The politics controlled by the poor. We have economy and politics. Both are different representatives. Both have different support base, different social nature. So politics is the kind of politics we find, identity politics, and the kind of economy we find, there is a mismatch, and this mismatch gives rise to conflict. To make this presentation short, I just highlight 2-3 major issues of conflict. The first issue of conflict, the major issue of conflict, is the issue of land acquisition. The way land acquisition, because this is all direct offshoot of the policy of globalization and liberalization. The government of India, it has started SAZE, special economic zones, and for that land acquisition, it has given free hand. There is no check, and because of this land acquisition and support by the government, many of the tribal land, there is a strong protest by the farmers. There is a strong resentment, local level resentment. Ignoring all these resentment, lands are acquired not for agricultural purposes, but for supporting the corporate, for supporting the business. This creates a conflicting situation. The other issue of conflict is the issue of displacement due to encroachment of forest and mineral resources, particularly in tribal areas. This is also a very important source of conflict. You know, the tribal people, they are displaced. The mineral resources, 96% mineral resources in 3 tribal states of India, Jharkhand, Orissa and Chhattisgarh, and they are the poorest states of India. You know, their prices of iron ore have gone up 10 times in international market. Prices of bauxite twice they have gone in international market in 10 years. And bauxite, iron ore, they are produced in Orissa, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh. The demand of there is a strong international demand. There is you earn lot of foreign currency by exporting iron ore, by exporting bauxite, by exporting other mineral resources which these 3 tribal states possess. But what is this? You are earning lot of money, foreign deposit, foreign currency, but the people of these 3 states, they are poor, they are deprived, they are displaced. You know, there is illegal mining. You have opened up mining to the private sector. What has happened in Karnataka? Reddy brothers, they were involved in illegal mining. So this displacement, encroachment of forest land and mineral resources, loot of mineral resources, they have also created a fertile ground for the rise of conflict. The water is another problem. You know, water is also very important natural resource. This has also created a conflicting situation in India. In many of the tribal, again I cite the example of Chhattisgarh. In Chhattisgarh, Bastar and other districts, there is no drinking water, there is no water for irrigation. But corporate sectors, they are supplied water by the state, by the government, whereas the many people, these statistics are available in government department, that the area is without drinking water, agriculture is without irrigation facilities, but there is no interruption in water supply to corporate sector. Tata has started iron and steel factory in Chhattisgarh. Jindal has started. There is no interruption of water supply. So on the one hand, you are providing a scarce resource like water to corporate sector, and the local people, their right on water is much more than the outsiders. It creates conflicting situation for the area. Now the state, point out the responses of the state, how a state has responded to these conflicting situations. The flagship program of the state is Manrega, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. This is a very important act, and people say that because of this Manrega, the UPA government got second mandate in 2009 election. It is, in brief, it is an act which ensures right to work. Right to work is already there in our constitution, in directive principles of state policy. That has been given practical shape, that any household, if it claims work, then each household should be given 100 days work, and they should be given minimum wage. Minimum wage is revised by the government every year. So any household in rural India, if they are without any work, they can get 100 days work from the state. It is mandatory on the part of the state to give 100 days work. And if they apply for the work, then they have to give work within 15 days. And if they do not give work within 15 days, then they have to give compensation to those households not given work in 15 days, within 15 days. So this is a flagship program, but there are many corruption. There is a corruption in the entry, in payment and in depositing money, fictitious names, master roll carries fictitious name. You are claiming wages for 100 people, but in reality you are giving only 30 people job. So it is not free from corruption. But in any case, Manrega is a program.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have a caller from Haryana. So first take up question, then we'll continue our discussion.
Yes,
Please ask your question.
जी सर, मैं ये पूछना चाह रही थी गवर्नमेंट के बारे में कि जो हमारे देश में डेमोक्रेसी है तो उससे कोई सुधार नहीं है, मतलब ज्यादा विकास नहीं हो रहा। भारत का हो तो रहा है, लेकिन जैसे भ्रष्टाचार है और भी कई मतलब महंगाई है और भी कई कमियां हैं, तो कोई और तरीका नहीं हो सकता मतलब कि जिससे देश का विकास हो?
उसी के संदर्भ में करप्शन इन चीज़ों पर तो हम लोग
हाँ,
और चर्चा
मैं
करेंगे,
इसी-
लेकिन कौन कौन स्टेप्स लिया गया है रिसेंट पास में, कौन कौन सा स्कीम चल रहा है, उसी पर अभी चर्चा
मैं उसी चीज़ के ऊपर उसी चीज़
हो रही है।
को मैं बता रहा था। और मेरा ये मानना है कि कुछ जो राज्य के द्वारा उठाए गए कदम हैं उनका सकारात्मक परिणाम निकल रहा है। इस बात में बिल्कुल सच्चाई है कि भ्रष्टाचार आज बिल्कुल पूरी तरह से एक बड़ी समस्या बनकर उभर रही है। लेकिन आरटीआई जो है, राइट टू इन्फॉर्मेशन, इसकी वजह से भ्रष्टाचार उजागर हो रहा है। पहले तो मालूम भी नहीं होता था कि भ्रष्टाचार है, लेकिन आरटीआई के आने के बाद से भ्रष्टाचार के ऊपर लोगों का संतोष, जिस तरह से अन्ना हजारे और भी जिस तरह से भ्रष्टाचार के लिए कानून बनाए जा रहे हैं और ये किए जा रहे हैं, उसका असर हो रहा है। लेकिन मैं ये बता रहा था कि स्टेट हैज डेवलपमेंट रिलेटेड स्टेट हैज, because if people are unemployed, then they would swayed by, they can be attracted towards conflict, towards violence. So Manrega, I was talking about Manrega is one important program to ensure the right of the tribal people. There is a National Forest Act, it has been passed, and tribals have been allowed to use the forest resources. Not only use the forest resources, they have even allowed to dwell in on forest land. There is a policy of rehabilitation, for construction of dam, for construction of some industrial complex. People are displaced, so there is a policy of rehabilitation for these displaced people. Now, in many places, in many states of India, starvation death has taken place. Kalahandi in Orissa, some desert districts of Rajasthan, starvation death has been reported. So how to overcome starvation? For overcoming starvation, now the Parliament, the proposed food security bill, I think in winter session they are going to pass it. Other programs have been taken by the government: midday meal and National Literacy Mission, NRHM, National Rural Health Mission, ASHA, the trained nurses. So these programs have been taken. But your question is directed towards the state. There is a long gap between theory and practice. If you see the truth of the state initiative, these development programs taken by the state, then there is a long gap between reality, between theory and practice. In fact, a state, this is a time of globalization, liberalization, I said LPG. In this phase of development, a state indeed wants to help corporate sector. There should not be any discontentment. For containing discontentment, a state takes some measures to justify its role. So a state is trying to create its hegemony. A state is seeking legitimacy through all these socio-economic program and policies. The existing social structure, unless there is a structural change, unless society is equalized, it is very difficult to implement all these programs. There is a need of people-centric democracy. It is a power-centric democracy. If democracy, only those who are well off, only those who are they are coming from affluent section of society, if their voices are heard, then it will create real problem. So I just take 2-3 minutes. There is a need to decentralize power. Unless Gram Sabha, after 73rd amendment, Panchayati Raj system has become a reality in India. So there is a need to decentralize power, allow people at the village level to take decisions about development. How center or state capitals, they cannot decide about the local development. Where development is required, let it be decided by the local people, by the Gram Sabha. Again, there is a need of control and use of natural resources by the local people. Fifth schedule of constitution in 1996, PESA was passed, Panchayat extension to scheduled areas. What is this? It is that the people, local tribal people, they will decide whether the business will be allowed, whether minerals, extraction of mineral would be allowed or not. So PESA will decide. So allow PESA to operate so that it could exercise control on natural resources. There is a need of financial autonomy. Unless panchayats, they are given financial autonomy, nationalized bank, they should open a credit line for panchayats and provide credit. If panchayat performs, then the bank should give credit. If panchayat does not perform, performance is low, then the bank should not give credit. So there should be some financial support to the local level democracy, local level representative institution. And the last but not the least, a structural political approach to development. Unless you bring a structural change, providing finances, providing infrastructure, there is a need, because development is a matter of political right. Since LPG, liberalization, privatization and globalization, we find that development is taken away from the realm of politics. There is a conscious attempt to depoliticize development discourse. We have to counter it. We have to politicize development discourse so that it could be related with rights, people's rights. Development is a matter of political right. You cannot depoliticize it. So with this alternative paradigm of development, we can maximize the phenomena of conflict. Thank you very much.
We have another question from Haryana. Please ask your question.
जी सर, मैं ये पूछना चाहती हूँ कि जैसे गवर्नमेंट है हमारी, तो कई लोग ये सोचते हैं कि जैसे पॉलिटिक्स जो है अच्छी नहीं है, उसमें बेईमान लोग होते हैं, चालाक या कपटी लोग होते हैं, या फिर जो जनता का भला, मतलब सिर्फ अपना ही भला सोचते हैं, और तो ऐसे लोग को जाना चाहिए पॉलिटिक्स में जो सिर्फ मतलब वो कर सकें, मतलब ये सब कर सकें, बेईमानी वगैरह। तो जो ज्यादातर लोग होते हैं वो किसी और क्षेत्र में जाकर अपना कैरियर बनाना चाहते हैं, या फिर वो किसी और क्षेत्र में का ही चुनाव करते हैं। तो ये विचारधारा बदलने के लिए हमें क्या मतलब कदम उठाने चाहिए?
नहीं, जैसा कि मैं कह रहा था, पीपुल सेंट्रिक डेमोक्रेसी होना चाहिए। और दूसरी चीज़, इलेक्टोरल रिफॉर्म्स की बात बहुत दिनों से चल रही है। इलेक्शन में मनी पावर को कैसे रोका जाए, पॉलिटिक्स में जो क्रिमिनल बैकग्राउंड के लोग चले जाते हैं उसको रोकने के लिए बहुत से प्रयास किए जा रहे हैं। और ये बहुत बड़ा एक सिविल सोसाइटी का और लोगों का डिमांड है इलेक्टोरल रिफॉर्म्स करने की। जब तक इलेक्टोरल रिफॉर्म्स नहीं होगा, पॉलिटिक्स में लोग जाने से घबराएंगे। जैसा आप कह रही हैं कि अच्छे लोग जाने से घबराएंगे, ये तभी हो सकता है जब चुनाव व्यवस्था में सुधार हो। और चुनाव व्यवस्था में सुधार करने की बात सरकार कर रही है, दबाव भी है, अन्ना हजारे का मूवमेंट भी है, सिविल सोसाइटी का और लोग भी इसमें सुधार करने की बात कर रहे हैं, जुडिशरी में सुधार की बात कर रहे हैं। ये एक ब्यूरोक्रेट्स को टाइम बाउंड काम को करना है आपको, अगर नहीं करेंगे तो आपकी एक अकाउंटेबिलिटी होगी, सिटीजन्स चार्टर बन रहे हैं। तो ये सारे चीज़ें अगर राजनीति के बिना हम राजनीति, ये एक बहुत ही सिंपलिस्टिक सोच है कि राजनीति गंदी चीज़ है। अगर सब लोग इस तरह से सोचने लगेंगे तो कुछ नहीं होगा। राजनीति के माध्यम से ही, एक राज्य व्यवस्था के माध्यम से ही कोई परिवर्तन हो सकता है। और राज्य व्यवस्था में अगर बुराई है तो उसको कैसे दूर किया जाए। लोकतंत्र है, लोकतंत्र में वर्चस्व वाले लोगों का ही बोलबाला है, तो कैसे आम आदमी की बोलबाला को, आम आदमी की हिस्सेदारी को उसमें बढ़ाया जाए, ये सोचना है। और ये सोचना सिविल सोसाइटी के लोग और लोग शुरू कर दिए हैं। और उम्मीद है कि इलेक्टोरल रिफॉर्म्स और सिविल सोसाइटी के प्रयास से राजनीति की छवि बदलेगी,
बदल रही है। जो स्थितियां 10 साल पहले थी वो आज नहीं है।
आज नहीं है, बिल्कुल।
कई तरह के, और खास करके ये भी हम लोग को देखना चाहिए कि जो राजनीति में लोग आते हैं 5 साल के बाद 50% उसमें नया चेहरा होता है, ऑलमोस्ट 50%।
बिल्कुल।
उसी प्रकार ब्यूरोक्रेसी में भी 50 to 60% मिडिल क्लास से या लोअर मिडिल क्लास से लोग आते हैं। ये अलग बात है कि जब उसमें लोग आते हैं तो व्यवहार उसके जैसा करना शुरू कर देते हैं। तो सबको सोचना है, ये नहीं कि कोई पर्टिकुलर सेगमेंट की बात नहीं है, पर्टिकुलर क्षेत्र की बात नहीं है।
जागरूक सिविल सोसाइटी का रहना बहुत जरूरी है कि जब लोगों की जो एजेंडा है, लोगों की जो प्राथमिकताएं हैं, उससे अगर अलग ब्यूरोक्रेट या पॉलिटिशियन जा रहे हैं तो उनको रिमाइंड कर सके। जैसे आरटीआई एक इंस्टीट्यूशनल मैकेनिज्म है जिसके माध्यम से हम उनकी जवाबदेही ले सकते हैं।
खुद सोचना पड़ेगा, सब लोगों को सोचना पड़ेगा, तभी जाकर जो स्थिति फिलहाल स्थिति है उसमें कुछ सुधार या बदलाव की बात हो सकती है।
बिल्कुल, जागरूक नहीं रहेंगे तो फिर तो आपके अधिकार की रक्षा नहीं हो सकती है।
तो ओवरऑल जो हम लोग डिस्कशन किए उससे जो एक तो दो बात सामने आती है, एक जो डिस्पैरिटी आ गया है समाज में, या जिस तरह से कंट्राडिक्शन आपने बताया, फाइनेंशियल एंड पॉलिटिकल कंट्राडिक्शन एंड रिच एंड पुअर में गैप, सो इन सभी बिंदुओं को एक साथ लेकर अगर हम एक साथ प्रयास किया जाए तो बहुत ही कम समय में इसमें इसकी जो छवि है इसको बदल सकती है और अच्छा हो सकता है। सो मित्रों, इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ आज के लेक्चर को यहीं विराम देना चाहूँगा और आप सबको धन्यवाद, और आपकी ओर से डॉक्टर GN त्रिवेदी को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। इन्होंने काफ़ी सरल भाषा में और काफ़ी महत्वपूर्ण बिंदुओं को हम लोगों के सामने रखा, और साथ ही यह भी बताने की कोशिश की कि किस प्रकार से आम लोगों के प्रयास से और जिस तरह से अभी वर्तमान परिदृश्य बना है उससे आने वाले दिनों में एक अच्छा रूप हम लोग देख सकते हैं। तो इन्हीं बातों के साथ मैं आज का लेक्चर को वहीं ख़त्म करता हूं, और आप सबको एक बार फिर से धन्यवाद। थैंक यू।